Judge Joe Brown, and we're listening to We All Be News, News-Free Dixie for the 21st century.
But it's also like revisiting my old friends and my earlier life. Except I have to walk better then.
So, did you want to reflect on it also, sir?
As I saw the film, I reflected on the sisters that we've lost. There are just only 6 of us still alive today from the film. Mrs. Maybertha Carter is gone, the Hudson sisters, Dr. Elsie Dorsey, Ms. Anna Devine, Mrs. Sandra Hamer, Mrs. Victoria Gray, Jim Johnson. Most of the women are now gone, and as I sat and just watched their faces and listened to their testimonies again, I was just really moved that there was a collaborative effort to bring us women together by Joan and Bob Sadoff to tell these stories.
Constance?
Well, each time I see the movie, I get angry, but I get over it. It makes me feel that the more things change, the more they stay the same. And that makes me very, very unhappy. And I strongly believe that we must remain vigilant. And if we are not vigilant, I think I said earlier that if you take the vote away, America becomes America that enslaved us. Not just Mississippi. We focus here on Mississippi, but I'm concerned about that racism that's entrenched in our institutions, that is manifested in the voting process. So while it makes me angry, most of us understand, I think Ben Pearson said in the movie, when you get so angry, you do things that in your right mind you would not do. And I look at all of us who were active in the movement, and I'm just so thankful that God took care of us, because I used to get so angry I don't even know what I was saying. And you know, and I look at Hollis and Mac and how they used to do things that made me question whether or not they were sane. And the blessing is they were sane and they were listening. They had a different constitution than I had. And I now appreciate those warriors and those women like Ms. Hamer, who did things that were prayerful. And I wish that I could have had that same temperament. And when I look at the movie, I mean, you know, I just realized how angry I was. And hopefully I'm not as angry as I was then.
The film evokes a wide range of feelings within me. I'm not quite sure how they're manifested in my daily life, but to go back and be reminded of the beatings of Ms. Hamer in June, and Yvette Simpson, and others, A.L.L, one of them, sustained as a result of going to the bus station in Montgomery County, Mississippi, trying to get some food when the bus stopped. You do get angry, and that was June 12th, 1963, when Meg Evans was murdered. And subsequently they were jailed, and
Lawrence Guyot went to someone to try to get them out, and he was jailed and beaten brutally. And Guyot told me that the place became silent around midnight because you had heard the cries from people who were brutalized, but there was an eerie silence. And he was more than sure that it was around the time that maybe Evans had been murdered, and they had planned to kill them, but maybe Evans was murdered. I remember us calling the jail, and I talked to Guyot. I said, "Who am I?" And if he answered in the affirmative, he said, "You're Dora Ladner." So I knew that I was talking to Guyot. But he sounded constrained. And when they were released, I saw Ms. Hamer and Guyot and others came to the Masonic Temple on Main Street. There were many people around because maybe had been murdered. And Guyot pulled his shirt off. And I'd never seen such brutality. He was very fair skinned. And his back reminded me of a piece of raw beef that had been beaten. Ms. Hamer had a red eye, bloodshot red eye. And she had problems ambulating, but it was worse. She could barely walk. She had kidney problems after being beaten and kicked so badly. I don't remember seeing you, Esther. A.L.L was brutally beaten. And so, with Meg's death and them coming there brutalized, left a gross imprint in my brain. But I must tell you that didn't stop anything in my spirit. It made me more determined to try and bring about change, coming from Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And I guess I was born to rebel and just born with the spirit of wanting to make things right. Not necessarily picking fights, but ending the fight. And watching Betty Pearson, a white woman from Mississippi, we never engaged in working with white people from Mississippi. They were here, but the way the lines were drawn, they didn't cross the lines, and there were well-meaning people on both sides, but we didn't dare cross the line. I didn't know any white people, other than, some people related to my folks and so forth. But point was, we didn't have the opportunity to engage them in dialogue until much later. Some would come to Tougaloo College, where I was a student here, and to Dr. Arinsky's lab, or Millsaps and around, and talk. I think that was probably the only forum in the state where you could have a comfortable dialogue. And one other thing, when the Freedom Democratic Party was established, that gave us an opportunity to really participate in the political process and to try and get into the national politics. We had been trying to register to vote to no avail, and then we went to the Democratic Convention and was shut out. We came back more determined, and I'm happy to say we got an elected official, first elected official of Madison County, and that was one of the worst hellholes in the world because being a student at Tougaloo, Armstrong and MacArthur and I used to go up there when the lines were very long wrapped all around the courthouse in Madison County and look, and the guns were drawn, the sheriff and all the deputies standing around, but the people didn't move. And you had Mr. Steele Chin and others there, making sure that no one would be harmed. So I want to say that I want to thank the people who are documenting the film, and I want to say to the young people that when you say that I don't want to register to vote, and I don't particularly know why it's necessary. It is necessary, and one thing that I can say, I said earlier that more and more young black people and people of color are getting arrested, and you do want to jury your peers. The jurors come from the voter pool, registered voters, and you get arrested and you go to jury trial. 9 times out of 10, you won't see black people on the jury. So you heard about these cases across the country where you don't have your peers in the jury. So we need to think about that, educate young people, and there are other advantages to voting besides, just trying to elect an official. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a question? With today's time, yes.
Yes, I have a question. The main goal for you guys, or from the feeling that I got, was to get people to register to vote and to have a voice in the party. And so for our current situation now, what do you, or what would be your opinion on what we as young people, or even the older generation, what do you think we should do, to help some of the situations that are going on right now in society as far as like our people?
Great question.
John?
Well, my father used to always say, if you don't vote, you can't complain. You want to have a say in who's making those laws and who's enforcing them, you got to vote. And listening to Dory, I was thinking, this is related but not quite on the point, that when Medgar was killed, that was the day that President Kennedy had gone on national television calling for a civil rights law. And for the young folks, there were 3 television stations back then. They signed off the air after the late evening news, and when the president went on, the country came to a standstill. That night, when Kennedy called for civil rights, Medgar was killed. The day that Medgar was buried in Arlington Cemetery was the day that the bill was sent up to Congress. And the day that President Lyndon Johnson signed the law after Kennedy's assassination would have been Medgar Everett's 39th birthday. So I think the way we can best honor the memory of Medgar, whose name is all over the place in this state, is to register and then go and vote. It's the best way when you've got a block of voters, a group of voters thinking the same way. That's the best way to move politics.
What do you want us?
Thank you. From my perspective, registered voters determine every facet of life. Every facet of life. Registered voters determine how much money schools are going to receive. They determine whether or not schools are going to have extracurricular activities or not. They determine such minor or minute things from someone else's logic, where a red light is going to be placed so that students can cross the street safely. Registered voters determine everything. And if we don't vote, then certainly we have no voice. One of the reasons that I became elected in 1968, and that's been a long time ago, was because registered voters were fed up with the kind of treatment that they were getting. And when you mentioned Madison County, I am from Madison County. And I filed one of the first lawsuits in Mississippi in 1969 or 70 to ensure a true jury selection process. When I was elected in 1968, there were 3 whites and 2 blacks on the Board of Commissioners. And when I presented my list of voters, my list of campaign workers and poll workers to my committee, they did not agree. They turned my committee members down. I went to court on that. I was also very, very aware that our circuit clerk arbitrarily and capriciously selected persons to serve on jurors. As an example, if a black man was accused of shooting or looking inappropriately at a white person, he could have faced life with the wrong kind of jury. So I filed a lawsuit that was heard in Yazoo County because the judge was a judge for Madison and Yazoo. And the lawsuit that I filed was to implement a fair jury selection process. The decision was based on a certain number of registered voters being allowed to be jurors. So in Madison County, the judge decreed that every 10th registered voter would in fact serve on a jury. Well, if you're not registered, then you can have no say in any case. And as a result of that, many cities and towns across the state adopted that process, and even today, many cities still carry on that same procedure in selecting every so many registered voters to be engaged in the process. One of the reasons I believe that we're having so much anarchy and chaos even today and all this, the political season we're in now, is because many people who attend all these rallies, they're not registered, I would dare to say. So we simply must not only register, but we must vote for people who we believe have our best interest at heart. And when we stay home watching as the world turns, the world is turning, but it's turning without you. And so young people, we have to remember, you see, our ancestors couldn't vote. And if you don't want to do it for you, if they don't want to do it for themselves, please do it for the grandmas and the grandpas and the Uncle Bubba's and the Aunt Shules who couldn't register to vote because the system would not allow them to. So just not for yourselves, but tell other young people to also vote because their grandparents could not. And we owe it to them to carry on their legacy as we have become, and we've had the opportunity to become first-class citizens, that we take that seriously and not just, well, you know, they only elected, you know, there's John, there's Jack, there's Paul, and there's Peter. They're all are bad. But try and find someone who maybe is a lesser of the evils, because somebody's going to get in it, and you can have a say in who that person is.
Do we have another question? Yes.
I want to address the question to her about anger. We as black women, a lot of times get stigmatized as being angry. But when I looked at this film, I'm not a little sensitive, crying kind of person, but I got very emotional and I got angry. And as far as younger black women dealing with that anger thing, I was born in 1960. As a matter of fact, I lived next door to Memphis. June 12th, he was killed June 13th. I was 3 years old. I turned 3 years old. And I still get the anger thing in me at age 55. And I know I have to let go of it. I don't know, is there any advice for younger women in their 20s and 30s to not be so angry? Because I'm old enough to know what you all went through, okay? But some of the younger women are not. But still, we have those anger issues.
I appreciate that question. Right now, I'm working with, I retired from the national practice about 5 years ago, and I served as youth court prosecutor, and I served as youth court prosecutor for about 10 years. And I see so many angry black children, to the point that they have little ways of determining your behavior and your deportment and deciding whether or not they want to put you in ISS. And anger management is the greatest problem with thing. But when you look at young black children and you look at old black folks, we all have a right to be angry. You know, and I've heard Mrs. Hamer tell me, child, don't be so mad, don't be so mean. But when I look at the unfairness, you know, and publicly I'll say that when I was at the university, had it not been for my mother, I would have gone to hell. Because I did not think that God was being fair to black people. And we were always going to church, falling on our knees, and I just really felt that God didn't care. And my mama prayed for me. And I didn't realize that she had that connection until she died. And I was on my own. And I had to start praying for myself and for my daughter. But anger and disappointment and hurt, sometimes it's not anger, it's just the pain that hurts and aches. You know, my cousin was Memphis, Norma. He was with Joan and Ann Moody when he sat in at Woolworth. And most people would joke, we don't believe you all cousins. You know, I said, well, you know, he was somewhere else when the Lord was passing out certain things. Because, you know, now, I could not be nonviolent. I know that. And that's why I stayed away from certain things. And anger management, if you can control and you can manage your anger, you're 1,000 times better off. And I say that in retrospect. Now, when I get angry, I do a lot of meditating. And I encourage young people to meditate. Take a deep breath when something makes you furious. And don't do a quick 10 count. You know, breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. I'm not sure that I could get upset with a young kid who just got furious when they see a black boy, 12 years old, murdered. You know, I can't say, well, don't hate, don't get mad. Because those are human emotions. They're normal. So the advice I give them is to remember, when you get angry, you hurt yourself. And believe it or not, it's helped with some of the kids. And, you know, my thing is that right now, I encourage them to think about the prayer of serenity. But now that's for old folks. Let me just tell you. You know, I tell folks right now, they say, you do what? The prayer of serenity. Well, that's because I can't do nothing anyway. You know, you realize if somebody has their foot on your throat, when you are young, you can break their foot, get it off of your throat. But now when you reach a certain age, you can't muster the same kind of energy that you had. So we have to, you know, I have to, for my own peace of mind, is I have to say, if I can do it, I'm going to do it. And I ask for courage to do it. But if I can't, I got to let it go. And when they talk about wisdom, is knowing the difference when wisdom comes with age and experiences. And when I hear this movie, and I look at what UNITY is saying, and one of my favorite people in the whole wide world was Elsie Dorsey Thomas. She was the one that got hooked on the prayer of serenity. So I don't know whether I can relate that prayer of serenity at this point in time to young people who have a right to be angry. So I just say, don't hurt yourself when you're angry. That's the best advice I can give.
Good evening, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you all for being here. I always grew up loving history, but always thinking that it's something that I'm not connected to. And being a part of this weekend, living here in Mississippi, I'm not from here, has really given me an appreciation for history and understanding that I live a legacy. I don't read about a legacy. And so as a young woman, as a mother, as a professional woman, I'd like to hear from you all about two things. One, your role as a woman, and one, your role if you have children as a mother. As a woman, in particular a professional woman, what advice would you give to women who are dealing with injustice daily as they go to work, as they are in society, and seeing things that you know aren't just, but not really knowing how to address them in a way that allows you to still be a professional, to grow in your career, but also to still support those things that movement is based on. And then secondly, as a mother, how do I communicate to my 3 daughters why it's important? One of them asked me today, are we going to something again? Because they said, you know, that's the past, can't we just, you know, move forward? And my response was, you can't move forward based on something you don't know anything about. So I'd like for you all to help me know what I can communicate to my daughters so that they know why they're a living legacy and why they don't see it as something that they're disconnected from.
Well, so, yeah, that's good.
I would like to say you're doing the right thing right now. You're doing the right thing right now with your children. You're exposing them and they're getting certain messages. They don't have to read it in the books. You try to communicate it to them. They're listening to testimony here. These are your 3 daughters. But they're listening. They're old enough to understand a lot of things that we're saying about injustice. And hopefully they will be able to talk to each other and to ask you more questions. Other things that professionally, there are avenues now of expression that you can address as a professional woman. EPO and other different areas. If you, this is not a union state, but I don't know what kind of safeguard you may have, but I do know on the federal level there are areas that you can go to. You can also address your concerns with your peers and try to talk about how you can strategize and do that, and also to keep up professionally with what women are doing in general. It appears that you're doing that. So the message that you're getting, you're learning, you're young also. And so hopefully you will continue to learn and to use the tools that you're getting, and also go to your peers and talk about what you've learned and have study groups. And don't, isolate yourself.
I'm pleased that you're able to answer your own question.
Right.
I think that you, bringing your children, bringing your babies with you is the best thing that you can do. When my daughter was 6 weeks old, she went to her first NAACP convention. And she became the doll. Everybody liked to play with her. She grew up in there. And she understood. She didn't have to learn anymore. And it's a part of her. Your babies will understand just by being as Dory said. They are living history. It's nothing you have to teach them. I would suggest, however, that you discuss it with them when you get home. And not just today, but forever. They are hearing who they are. And they are hearing what their responsibilities are. You, on the other hand, I think you're most intelligent, first of all, and obviously very caring. Right will always be right. Today, tomorrow, and yesterday. If someone mistreats you at work, recognize that they have a problem. And you have to be strong enough to either let them know to get off your back, move back, or report it to someone to do something about it. If you don't let it out, it will eat you, it will destroy you, and it will create an anger. It's very difficult to control. I had to learn the hard way. Somebody made me mad, I cussed them out. I didn't have a stroke. But that was not good for me, that was good for the situation. I strongly suggest that you look at the problem and look at what confronts your relationship, what's unfair, and you know the answer. All you have to do is pull it out. You know how to deal with the situation. You can let someone know to get off your bed without killing them. So I think you're awesome as a mother and as a young professional.
Just a quick, Joan has to leave to catch a flight, so I'm not sure she has a few lasting comments.
I want to thank all of you and young ladies. A lot of this stuff may not make good sense, but someday there'll be things you've heard that you'll be able to use for the situations that you face. Now I've got a plane to catch and it ain't gonna wait for me. I'm gonna hobble on out. Woo!
question?
We have now.
Amen.
I don't have a question, I just want to thank you all so much for all that you did and all that you continue to do and for sharing your stories. I was born here in Jackson when my parents moved here from 65 to 68, and they worked as a team, and even as a child I was aware that my mom's story wasn't getting out as much as my father's story. And so she would be so happy, she passed away about 10 years ago, but she would be so happy to know this film was made and the stories of the women of the movement were out there. Even as a kid, I could tell she was the brains behind what they did. And he was the one interviewed, always bothered me, so thank you so much.
Thank you for coming, and let's give our ladies a hand, please. They want to come down? And go on the stage, they want to come down? So you can come down.